Hi all, Paulette with Back to Basics Mom and S&P Gifts here. So today I want to talk to you about a subject that it's going to be a little different for everybody, but I want to talk to you today about epoxy. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the epoxy that I use, why I like it over some others I've tried. I'm going to show you how I fill my bottles and why I've chosen to do mine that way, and I'm going to show you how I mix it up, and just some real basic stuff about mixing epoxy. Now, is my way the only way? It is certainly not the only way. It is the way that I have found works best for me out of trying. I've been doing cups for almost 2 years. So the things that I'm going to talk to you about today are the things that I have found that work for me, and I want to encourage and I can't think of the word I want to say, empower. I want to encourage and empower you to try different things to make the epoxy work for you in the best way. Now, the current epoxy I am using is it's from Counterculture DIY. They have a website. You just type in Counterculture DIY and you'll find their website. And this is the artist resin. I also have their fast set, which I do use occasionally, but not very much. I find the artist resin works for me for most all of my applications. Occasionally I will use the fast set if I have a project I need to complete quicker, but I have not perfected the fast set yet, so I don't use it a ton. So this takes longer, but I'm more familiar with it. So when you get your 2-part epoxy, obviously it's going to come 2 parts. So there's the part A and there's the part B. Usually always the part B will have the black cover on it. So, because it's really important if you're filling other containers to hold in between smaller containers, it's really important to keep those separate. So what I do is I've tried many different things. I got these containers on Amazon. Currently, last time I checked, they're not available in the 16 ounce, but I have used the 8 ounce as well, and those are available. I will see if I can put the link below in the comments. But I use these, and one of the things I like about them is they have this screw-off cap. So the nice thing is if you need to trim these down, the tips down to get a bigger hole, your cap is still going to fit. If you have the bottles like this that just has the little push-on lid that only comes down to like here, sometimes when you trim them, those lids don't fit back on. Ask me how I know. The other thing I really like about this bottle is I know the top's a little narrow for transferring resin, but I like this because it has a longer thread base. When I used some inexpensive bottles like this, like from Walmart, it had a very short thread base, and the part A is thicker, and when I was squishing that out, like the whole lid flew right off. So knowing what I know now, I'd probably be okay because I usually warm part A, but we're getting to that part. So those are things to look for. I like when I use the 8 ounce, again, it was just fine. I just had to fill them more often, so I do like this size. So you'll notice this is my part B. I have it labeled with not only part B, but I have the brand because there have been times when I've had more than one brand lying around the house. I also put black on the top so I can see it. I put it on the lid. I put it on this because I don't want to mix anything up between my part A and part B. Now epoxy will take off. This is just permanent marker, and the epoxy, if you drip any on there, that will wipe off, so you do have to touch it up every now and again. So I have the part B, and then I have my part A. So I know for sure which is which. Now, my part A, I keep in a mason jar with water, and it sits on, this is an old coffee warmer. Any of the new, you can see it's pretty rough because I've had it a long time, and I've used it for multiple purposes. But this was originally a coffee warmer. A lot of people now have them. Now they're like candle warmers, things like that. back when I got this years ago, the candle warmers weren't a thing yet. So that tells you how old it is. So I have that, and it's on most of the time because my basement is pretty cool even in the summertime, and it really doesn't get it that hot. I suppose I could take the temperature in there. And I do have to occasionally fill it up, not fill it, but add water to it because it does evaporate over time. So I just keep that kind of back here out of the way, plugged in. And then for my part B, well, part B is thinner and doesn't necessarily need to be warmed up. I do a few minutes before I'm getting ready to work. I fill, this is just an oddball double wall stainless cup from Walmart that I got on clearance that I haven't used for anything. So I just fill that halfway up with super hot tap water and plop my jug in there. And then by the time I have the rest of my stuff assembled, that's warmed up enough to use it. So it's especially helpful to me in the wintertime when it's cooler down here. But right now I'm going to fill these. I'm probably not going to fill them all the way because I don't want you to have to sit and watch me. These big gallon jugs are heavy, so the first time I do this, it's usually a little bit of a chore. Something I do so I don't get my bottles mixed up, because I'm almost done it a bunch of times, is I don't even get my other ones out. Like, I do one at a time. Like, don't uncap it, the other one, nothing. So I just do it one at a time. And just pour really slow. You probably won't even be able to see me do this, because sometimes the first glug will make a little bit of a mess. You can get funnels. I've just kind of gotten a feel for it over time. Especially if you could find like a silicone funnel that you could wipe out and wash out afterwards. That would be ideal. Or you could make yourself a temporary, probably a parchment paper one or something. I've never tried that, so don't take my word for it. But, so... Alright, I'm just kind of careful to save as much as I can. Alright, so I'm good. So black lid, black mark, part B, part B. Add that over there, get rid of this one. I just keep a rag around so I can wipe off the bottom because water and resin doesn't do well together, so I just keep my rags around. Anytime I see big packs of those on sale at a really good price, I like to pick up a pack. So now part A is thicker, so I have to be a little bit more careful, especially with that first little bit. So I know you probably don't really need to see me do this. It's kind of a no-brainer, but you can always skip ahead to the next part, but I'm just kind of showing you so you can see that, yes, you can do it this way. You just got to be, like, this is not something to rush. Every time I try to rush and do this, I glug it and I waste epoxy. And epoxy is expensive, so you want to try and save as much as you can. It's one of the reasons I like transferring it into these other bottles, because I feel like I have a lot more control. I've tried syringes, I've tried the FIFO bottles, and I just cannot measure as accurately as I can with these. Now, everybody's different. I know people that love those two other things. FIFO bottles just weren't for me. They leaked, they made a mess, no matter what I did. And the syringes, I felt it added a lot of air, personally, to my mixing. So sorry if I'm not talking a lot right now. I'm trying to watch this at the same time. Again, you find what works best for you. We're all gonna... Ooh, I'm pouring too fast. Ooh, I almost lost it. Everybody's gonna find what works for them. So that's why when everybody's like, I see people are like, tell me how to make cups, and I'm like, YouTube. I see it on the crafty pages all the time. These cups are so beautiful, how do you make them? And I'm like, go search YouTube. Go watch hours and hours of YouTube, because everybody does things just a little bit different, and you're probably not going to copy anybody completely, but you're going to find tips here and there from everyone that's just it's gonna resonate with you. It's gonna be something that makes sense in your brain, because everybody processes information differently. I shouldn't have filled this all the way, but since I filled the other one all the way, I wanted to just do this one too, and it's a little bit thicker, so it takes a little bit longer. And which reminds me, I need to order more epoxy. I was hoping, kind of waiting to see if they would have a sale on this over the 4th. They had a lot of times they'll do that. The different companies will have sales, over the holidays. So I almost bought it on Memorial Day when they had a special, but I was like, oh, I'm going to wait for the 4th and keep my fingers crossed. So both of those are done. I'm going to set that in my water for a few minutes while we chat. So I made a mess because I had too much water in this cup and not enough over here. So oh, no, that one's got too much. I'm making a mess everywhere today. Story of my life. If you're a crafter, you know how it is. There we go. That one's nice and full. Excuse my reach. Put that one in there. Yep, the water's still warm in there, so we'll let those sit and warm up just a few minutes. Okay. So I'm going to talk to you about my mixing cups. So you can use little medicine cups like this. They usually come in if you buy them in bulk, they come in a big long sleeve. You can buy them off medical supply places, which I have done. Oh, I can't remember the name of the one I did order from. But actually, I got these from Amazon, and I like them better. And I'll tell you why in a second. So you can also get, if you want something bigger to mix bigger amounts, you can get silicone measuring cups. This one's quite large. When I use it, I only fill it maybe, I might do 100 mLs at a time. I usually don't do more than that, just because it gets too thick, and it's just kind of impossible. But I like those. You have to try and get the ones that have a nice smooth inside. If you have the ones that are more of a matte, rougher texture inside, the epoxy doesn't peel out. I will see about putting a link to that in the description as well. Excuse me, I'm going to take a drink. So I like to use the silicone ones for mixing bigger bunches. But they are a little bit of a pain to clean. If you wipe them with baby wipes right after, you can clean them up a little easier. I find I waste a little bit more when I use that big silicone container. When I use these, I get every last bit, and I'm not using like 3 baby wipes to clean it out. Otherwise, you can let it dry and then peel it out, but I still a lot of times have a hard time getting all the little bits out. So again, you're gonna find what works for you. Sorry, I'm just trying to see where I'm at here, so I'll make sure you can see me. I'm gonna sit for a second. Okay, so these little cups. So make sure you get the ones that have the milliliter markings on the side, which I don't know if you can see that. I guess I better stand back up again. I have such a glare from my light on my camera. I can't see. You can see that on the camera. But anyway, it's got the millimeter. This one's got a couple of different measurements on it. This one I like because it does not have any like pokey things on the inside. Like some of the cups have had little, I don't know if it's supports or stabilizers for structure or whatever, but they'll have down at the bottom edge like 1 or 2 or 3 little tiny pieces of plastic on the inside that poke out. So when you're stirring and mixing, that creates friction and it creates bubbles. So I like this one because it doesn't have that in it. It is perfect. I mean, it has slight indentations from the markings, but otherwise there are no ridges inside at all. So that helps with bubbles when you're mixing. So when you're starting, if you don't want to spend money on stuff like this, or I use these metal coffee stir sticks. If you don't want to spend money on these, you can start out with the little, they're like little shot glass cups at the Dollar Tree. You get like, I don't know, 50 of them for $1, which is actually more than I pay when I buy them in bulk. But if you're just starting out to try them, you can do that. Those do have the little thing on the inside, or you can even use paper cups, or if you have like drink cups left from a party, you can use just about anything. You just gotta, make sure you're measuring properly. So again, when I bought these off Amazon. Just they're metal. You just Google, not Google, but on Amazon search metal coffee stir sticks. These came in a set of 5, and I've been using them for a year and a half. I like them because they wipe off really easy with a baby wipe while it's wet, or if it dries, I just use a craft knife and I just scrape it off, no problem. I use the ball end to stir. Some people use the flat end. I tried the flat end. I thought I got more bubbles with the flat end, so I stir with the round end. Again, everybody's different. You're going to find out what works for you. So for actual mixing, I use the round end, but like when I'm getting towards the end on a cup or for different techniques, sometimes I'll use this end to just pull out a little bit and drizzle or something. So I find these to be very versatile. If you don't want to buy these, you can use the end of a spoon. Like if you have spoons that have a nice smooth end, fork, whatever you have, how the different silverware, if it's got a nice kind of tapered end. If you have like anything that's plastic and smooth or silicone and smooth, like even like Tupperware's citrus peelers, if you have, you can't put it back in your kitchen again, but anything that's going to be smooth and then that you can wipe off will work just fine. You want to steer away from the wooden popsicle sticks, because those will put a lot of bubbles in your epoxy as you stir it, because those are they're porous and they're not, they feel smooth, but they actually catch the air and make bubbles and pockets and stuff. So I'm not saying this is the right way to do it, but this is how I measure and mix my epoxy, and I've been doing this way for almost 2 years, and it works for me. Directions on your packaging will say their recommended way to mix it, and I recommend you start that way and follow their instructions, but over time I've started doing it this way, and it saves a couple of cups, and I find that it works just fine. So I just take my Sharpie, and this is a 30 milliliter container, and I want to mix 30, so I mark it right at the 15, and then I mark it at the 30. And I set it down on my table. When I sit down here and I look this way, I can see those lines. So then usually just wipe off my container. And it's not hot, but it's not cold, and the bee is thinner anyway. So then I just squeeze it in, and then when I'm getting close to my line, I know you probably can't see it, but I kind of let up on my pressure when I'm getting close to my line, and I let the epoxy settle. because it's going to continue to move after. And plus sometimes it drips and I don't want to go over my line. So and then I just go really slow, sometimes a drip at a time. And I make sure I tip this up because I want the epoxy to run back into the tube and not pressurize and push out the end because it's going to mess with my measurements. I'm just trying to get it. And this is one of those things, if you decide to do it this way, you'll get a feel for, but you're better to go at it slow until you can, see what you're doing. All right. Another thing I do to save a little bit is I take my baby wipes. I get these from the dollar store, Dollar Tree specifically, because I have found they are the best value. So they have, there's 64 wipes for $1, and even the Walmart brand at Walmart for the same size, it's like $2.75. So I take them and I cut these into fourths. And I stick them in a jar. And I fill this up, whenever I need to fill it up. But I just keep that here on my desk. And that way I get these little pieces. And when I need to wipe off my tip, I have that. Now I'll be able to wipe both tips and my stir stick with this quarter of a wipe. So it helps me save money and stuff. So, which I'm all about that. So, get this one. See if it's warmed up enough. I like it to be a little bit warmer, but I think it'll be okay. So this is the one because it's thicker. You may want to cut this tip off just a tidge. I did not on this one, but you might want to cut it off just a little bit so you don't have to squeeze quite so hard, but I haven't had an issue with it. So I try to keep my nozzle down as close as I can to help keep bubbles out. I try to just do a nice smooth stream. If I am mixing more than this, I will unscrew the caps. If I'm doing 100 mLs, I will unscrew the caps and pour it most of the way that way, just to save time. So especially when you're doing this one, you want to stop before you get to your line and really let your epoxy settle, because this one is heavier, so it's got to go down, and when it goes down, it's going to bring that thinner layer up. So, gravity, balance, all that. So I just go slow. When I think I need a little bit more, I stop. I know this is too putsy for a lot of people, but I don't know, I find this way is the most economical as far as products go. Maybe not for my time, but I find it too. It works for me. Again, you guys are everybody's gonna find what works a little bit better for them. It took me probably about 6 months before I really got comfortable and found this technique, method, whatever. It's not really a technique, but this method that works for me. So, and then just pop it back in my jar. And then we're going to stir. So, usually it works better if you don't go in circles the whole time. I'm kind of doing a lift and stir to start out mixing those. And when I do go in a circle, I'm not scraping the sides all the time. I'm kind of not even really touching the sides every time. I do occasionally. A lot of people like to do figure eights. This is kind of a small cup to do a figure eight or do lines. It's a pretty small cup and I don't have to stir that much, so it doesn't matter too much. I do try to change up the way I'm stirring. I'm kind of scraping the bottom and bringing it to the top as I turn the cup. I try to find a balance between not taking forever to do this, to do it fairly quickly, but I don't want to do it too quickly because I don't want too many bubbles. I am scraping the sides this time and along the bottom. And now I'm not. Now I'm just kind of spinning it around, not touching the sides too much, because pretty much anything that causes friction in there is what's going to cause your bubbles. So my part A wasn't quite as warm as I normally like it, so I'm probably going to have to stir a little bit more than I normally would. So, but my bubbles aren't too bad. I find when I mix this much, it's usually perfect for me with the bubbles. If I'm mixing like 10 mLs or 20, you get a ton more bubbles just because, you know, there's less product to work with, and I don't know, I just get a lot more bubbles when I mix a less amount. But usually if I'm mixing 10, I'm putting glitter on. I'm doing epoxy method if I'm only mixing up 10, so that doesn't matter about the bubbles anyway. Most of the time I'm mixing up 30 at a time because I can do a coat on 2 or 3 cups with 30 for me. Usually like my final coats on most cups are like 15, depending on the size. Sometimes 20, but I don't often put more than 15 on a cup at one time. Especially if it's a final coat. I used to do all my coats super thin, and then I realized I actually have a smoother finish if I do at least 15. I do work in my basement. I do have animals, so I do have lint and stuff floating around. So even if I do get a piece of lint, I find that if I have at least 15 mils on the cup, it usually will sink down and you almost don't even see it. It'll sink in there deep enough. The only ones you see everything on, it seems to me, are like the wood grain cups or a non-glitter cup. Then you see everything, but sometimes if it's a painted cup, you only see it at a certain angle. Like, I think it'll look fine and it'll be nice and smooth, and then you look at just one certain angle and you can see, oh, there's a piece of lint under there, but at that point there's usually nothing you can do about it, so you just roll with it. Just kind of like if you get a stray piece of glitter. I just finished 4 cups that were all alcohol ink cups that they took me a long time to get the colors right and the textures right, and every single one of them had like 1 or 2 pieces of stray glitter, and even though I wiped them down, but I found most people don't mind, most people don't notice. If they do notice, they kind of feel like it's a weird quirk to the cup. So I've been mixing for a while. I do have a few bubbles. It's not bad. I don't know if you can see that, but it's clear. I don't have any like streaks. Like usually when the 2 parts are mixing together, you can kind of see the 2 parts mixing and whatnot, and this looks completely clear to me. So I'm gonna scrape this off. Oh, I have a gnat flying around that's making me nuts. I've been trying to kill it for 2 days because I know it's gonna land on a cup. Alright, so I am going to reposition the camera. I have to move it over by my turner, and I'm going to show you guys how I apply epoxy. So I'm pretty stingy with my epoxy, and I've had really good luck with this method. So give me a minute, and I'll see you back over on the turner. Okay, I'm back. So I got my cup set up on my turner. I apologize ahead of time. This turner that I'm using, the motor is a little bit loud, so hopefully it won't be too obnoxious. I'm working on this one is a 5 cup, but it is it's kind of a rotary style. I am working on an inline one, but I've had so many orders, which is a good thing lately, that I haven't had time to finish the other turner. So I have my epoxy that we already mixed up. You can see there are a few bubbles in there. I am not worried about that at all. That is really not that many. It's been sitting, I don't know, for about 5 minutes while I got my cup wiped down and I taped off the top. This customer that ordered this cup, she likes her rims taped off. This cup was kind of a challenge for me. It was my first using paper. She wanted a 31 Psalms cup, or Psalm 31, sorry. And I worked really hard to make this kind of what she wanted. So I'm going to put another coat of epoxy on this for her. Do I want to do this one? Did I want to do a different one? I'll do this one. Alright. I couldn't remember if I was supposed to put glitter in the epoxy for this, but I think I already put a little bit in there, so. Sorry, that's how my brain works. It's going like 15 different directions all at one time. So we're going to put a coat on here, and I'm going to show you how I apply it. So let me flip my machine on. Again, I apologize ahead of time that it's kind of loud. So, also this is not a camera setup I'm really used to or comfortable with, so bear with me. So I do not like to waste epoxy, so I go slow. So I just pour it on, but I go very slow, and I'm going to smooth it with my finger, so I'm hoping you can see. Try to move my arm a little bit here. Sorry if you have to see my fat arms in the video. Now my pinky that is smoothing the epoxy, not my pinky, my finger, I'm just barely touching the cup, like I'm just smoothing it out. And now as I meet where I start, I just kind of work my way down. And I'm going to do this all the way down the cup. Now I probably only need about 10 mLs on this cup. So you can, if you get kind of thick, you can kind of push it down like this. The reason I do it like this is I found, especially on non-glitter cups, the more I took my hand away and put it back to my cup, the more lint I got. So like I know a couple of people apply all of their coats with like a silicone brush or silicone like palette brush. I found, while I love the coverage and I love the coating you get with that, I found I got so much lint on my cups, it was making me absolutely crazy. So by doing it this way, for me, I have found I save epoxy, and I don't get as much lint on my cups. And I'm pretty much touching it all the way down so I can feel that I have epoxy all the way around. You can see as I hold what's left, I keep it over the cup because sometimes the edge will drip. And if it drips, I want it to drip on my cup. So now, to make sure I have this top edge filled in, I kind of rub my finger along this edge where that gap is. If I had gone all the way to the rim, I'll demonstrate that on the bottom when I do that in a moment, because I'll do it the same way, or I'll show you what I do. Okay, I can see that rim is full. Now I take my finger, because you notice I didn't, when I'm going around, I can't do the bottom, so I just kind of run it over and push it down. I'm just going over real lightly, and I don't take my fingers too far away from the cup, because again, I find I get a lot of lint. Now on glitter you have to be more careful, because the more you rub, the more bubbles you're going to get. So on glitter it's a little different, which I'm going to do one of those after I do this. Now this is not a final coat, so I'm not doing it super thick. I just want to make sure it's covered. Now, if this cup was glittered to the rim, I would go like this and just kind of scrape my finger at the edge, and I'm going to show you on this end. So I would go like this, like literally, and just barely put it down. So basically, you're not really scraping your finger against the edge. You're just, so that way, I rarely get epoxy like down up over the rim and inside. Like I see a lot of people like, oh, I got a whole bunch of epoxy inside my cup. How do I get it out? Well, I do my best not to get it in there. So, so that's that. Now I use my heat gun just a little bit. So this is going to get noisy for a minute. So block your ears. I do it to smooth out everything, and it helps pop some of the bubbles, and it loosens up the epoxy just a little bit. I keep it moving the entire time. I try to never stop in one place for very long, because you will get fish eyes or dimples if you stop in one place too long, or it'll heat it up too much and it'll drip. Okay. Now, if you're still seeing bubbles, you can also torch. So I'm going to show you how I torch. So this is my torch I use. And because of the positioning of this turner, heat rises. So most of the time, I torch underneath. I'm about 2 or 3 inches underneath. The heat from the torch is going to rise. If I have some stubborn spots, I'll go like this to do the end. But I'm usually going, you don't want to stop. If you stop, you're going to scorch your epoxy, and you're going to have wasted your time. So I'm just kind of watching, especially in the rim here, in this little silver area I have between the design and the tape. I'm looking to see if there's any bubbles or anything in there. It looks pretty good. So I am touching the tape right at the edge of where the tape meets the cup. So I'm not going all the way down in my design, and I'm just kind of pushing the epoxy that's on the tape kind of back down the cup. Okay, so that looks good. I need to, sometimes I change my glove at this point, sometimes I don't. I need to put it on my other turner that is up above so I can work on the next cup. Sorry, it's going to get shaky here for a minute while I Move cups around. I'll show you the whole setup when we're done, where I've moved things to. This gets a little tricky with bigger cups that go a little further up my wand, so I don't have as much room to hold on. But you do what works for you, and you had to make do sometimes. So. Okay, so this is a glitter cup. This one's got full glitter all the way to the top. I base painted it white. I did the alcohol ink with the canned air, and then I covered the whole thing in epoxy, and then I put on a sparkly glitter over it so I didn't have to blend glitters or anything. This one has the bottom taped off. Oh, hang on, I gotta fix I forgot to take this off up here. There we go. Sorry about that, I had to fix my stuff up above. I need a glove. Alright. So now we'll use the rest of the epoxy on here. And I do it the same exact way. Glitter, you do have to be a little careful with how much you push it down, because you will get more bubbles. Now, a little tip. If you put clear coat, I have found, I'm not going to say this works for everybody. For me, I have found if I do clear coat over my glitter, just a little bit of clear spray, I use Rust-Oleum 2X. Usually, I don't know, I have matte, I have semi-gloss, I have gloss. It just depends on what strikes me. If you do clear coat over your glitter, I get less bubbles. On white glitter and light colors, it doesn't matter so much. But if this was black, yeah, definitely clear coat it. Black and dark colors, navies, anything dark, putting your epoxy over dark colors. Just putting it on, the friction of your hand with the epoxy and the glitter, it makes bubbles. So even if your epoxy was completely clear when you started this, just the action of doing this creates bubbles. I'm not doing this very smoothly today. I don't know why. I think it's because I'm taping. And this got a little bit thick from all my talking and multiple things I was doing today. And I think I should have had a full 30 for doing this part. So, the rules are meant to be broken, so you can do it this way too. Now I'm going to drip. See, now I'm going to get drips. I need to just stick with my normal. When I do it somehow other than my normal, gets messed up. So I'm hoping you can see this. I'm sorry, I know this is slow. I know this is kind of tedious, but I don't know. Just with me, I find anytime I have to rush anything, I always mess up, and it takes me 3 times as long to fix it in the long run. So I tend to be a slow and steady wins the race kind of gal. I should have had a full 30 mLs to do this, but we're going to make do. So it's pretty thick up here, so now we're just going to, if this happens, it's fine, because I could tell when I was putting it on up here, it's fairly thick. So now I'm just going to See, I didn't push down too hard. I have a big glop on my finger there, so we're just going to spread that out. So I kind of get to the edge, and then because I want it to just go right to that top edge. Like, I don't want it to go down and around and in. Oops, sorry, I bumped the camera. My epoxy is getting a little thick because I'm going slow, which is okay. Oh, I can see a spot I missed right there. Should have sprayed this because for me, I don't know why, but white glitter is, the whites and the clears for me are notorious for giving me fish eyes. I don't know if it's just the material they're made of or what. But if I'm a little short on epoxy, this is kind of how I stretch it out, just slow and steady. This is not a final coat. This is the after glitter coat, so basically this is just my making sure all my glitter is stuck down. I'm going to warm it up a little bit with my heat gun. You know, the whole best laid plans thing, I kind of did this video on a whim today, so I didn't really have a plan, but hopefully you get some ideas on how to do things, how to not do things. If I was doing this on a dark cup, I would be totally screwed right now, because I would be creating so many bubbles, and I would be really unhappy. But luckily, the white cups are a lot more forgiving. Now, if I wanted this thicker, I could go mix up like another 20 milliliters and put it right over the top of this, since they would both still be wet, and be sort of, if you hear people talk about a flood coat, that kind of be like doing a flood coat, which I don't normally do, but if I put it right on top of like super wet epoxy, I don't mind it. Everybody has a different view on flood coats, if they're a good idea or a bad idea. I'm gonna torch it. This one, it's a little hard to tell if I've got bubbles or not because of the glitter I have on there. I think it's just the glitter. I don't think it's bubbles. So I'm going to take the tape off. I used to leave it on there like 45 minutes, and now I pretty much take it off right away because I've learned it. If I don't have it on there too thick, the epoxy is not going to go anywhere. So that's what this customer asked for, the bottom taped off, so I let my customers choose how they want it. So So that's about it. I mean, there's no one right way, no one wrong way to do things. Develop your own methods, develop your own skills and tools, and just go for it. I mean, I'm not wearing, you should wear PPE, you should wear a face mask, protective gear, all that. I do have a fan going, pulling air out behind me, so I do have ventilation, and when I turn the camera off, I will turn on another fan to ventilate. I have a hard time with masks and stuff with my asthma and talking loud enough, so usually when I'm doing this by myself, I do have my respirator on. But trying to talk loud to talk to you guys with that on actually gives me an asthma attack. So anyway, blah, blah, blah. You should wear PPE, you should wear gloves, you should wear protective equipment. Whether you choose to or not is up to you, but you should do those things. You should ventilate and wear protective equipment. Hi, so you probably just watched my video about epoxy and how I store it and mix it and apply it to cups and stuff. And I realized when I was editing that I forgot to talk to you a little bit about why I use the resin that I do and why I like the CC DIY versus others. So there are lots of epoxies on the market. First starting out, if you're looking to try and start doing molds or cups or something like that, most often people start with what they find at the craft store, which there's a couple of different brands. I started with Fama Wood, which was okay, not the best for cups. It does yellow pretty quickly. There's Amazing Clear Cast, which a lot of people like and use pretty exclusively. I really liked Envirotex Light because with the temperature in my basement, it works really well. The last two I mentioned, the Alumilite and the Envirotex Light, are FDA approved or FDA compliant, for sure, for minimal, like, food stuff, like just I can't remember what the wording is. I'd have to look it up. But those are okay, as well as there are a bunch of other brands put out there by small businesses. There's KS resin, which I used and is okay. There's Faux Rizal. There's Stone Coat. There's a whole bunch. I think I've used all of those except the Stone Coat I have not used. But I've used, okay, this is what I've used. I started with the Fama Wood. I went on to the Envirotex Light. I tried the Faux Rizal, which is very thick and was hard for me to work with personally. The KS was nice. I liked how it went on and everything. For me and in my conditions, it took a long time for it to get really hard, like to the point where my cups were firm enough that I could ship them. Typical epoxy is 3 days after final coat. For me, it was taking longer. I found the CC DIY and I really like it. I think it is the clearest, for me, in my experience. It has the clearest cover, the least amount of yellow. Like if I have it cure, like in a droplet or a little bit in a cup, if I look at it side by side with the others, I feel that it is the clearest, the least amount of yellow, all that for what I have tried so far. Each epoxy is going to have its quirks. Environment makes a huge difference. Your temperature you keep your area at, your humidity levels, if you have fan or air units moving around, those kinds of things. The type of torch you use, the type of heat gun you use, how you use your heat, those kinds of things. I do keep a couple of heat lamps over in my area where my turner is and my kind of curing area because it does tend to get a little cool in the winter. Sometimes we do have the wood stove down here, which helps, but sometimes I just need to warm up that area where everything is sitting just a little bit. And the heat lamps work for me as long as you don't have them too close. So for me, that's what I have found. What I recommend if you are looking for an epoxy to try is, if you're in a crafty group, look what people are using. Ask. Go to those company websites. CCDIY has a main website and a fan website. KS Resin does. Most of the companies have their own website or have a fan or a help Facebook page, those kinds of things. You can learn a lot. You can search those pages for topics. If you didn't know this, on Facebook, at the top of the page, there's a little search. You can search for any topic you want. You don't have to wait for people to get back to you. You can search ideas, pictures, whatever. There's lots and lots of help there. Basically, lots of reading, lots of research. So don't be afraid to try. Like I said, each epoxy is going to work different for you, and just don't be afraid to give it a try. Different heats, different temperatures, different humidities, all that is going to make a difference. So give it a try. Don't worry if you try one cup or one mold or one whatever, and if the epoxy seizes up on you or if it doesn't harden right or whatever. Don't give up. It's probably user error. A lot of times, if you don't mix the right ratios, all the epoxies I have used are a 1-to-1, so it's equal amounts. Some are different, so make sure you read your packaging on your epoxy that you purchase. If you're purchasing off Amazon, please make sure you read reviews. You don't know. I've seen a couple of people posting questions about epoxies recently that I have never heard of, which not necessarily mean anything, but most of the people on that page had never heard of it before. So, sometimes if you're ordering it off Amazon, sometimes it'll come from different countries. So make sure you're reading your packaging is the number one thing. Also, these are a little hard to find right now, but if nothing else, wear a respirator. Make sure you get one that is good for vapors and fine particles. This is one of the best things I ever bought. I actually can breathe pretty easy when I work with this. Just a regular paint mask, like a paper mask, is not going to help you, or any of the fabric masks that are popular right now for COVID and whatnot. Those are not going to help you with the vapors from the epoxy. So you need something like this. These cartridges, I haven't taken this out for a while. Anyway, these come apart. I believe these come apart. Anyway, these are replaceable. So make sure you get the one that's for the super fine particle vapors. That's what's going to help you. Like I said, even with my asthma, this is pretty easy for me to breathe in most of the time. I really want to get one that has the full face mask also, because I do notice if I'm doing a lot of epoxy, my eyes start to get a little achy. So in the meantime, what I've done is I have one of these just plain shot masks, and I took coffee filter and I put it around all the holes, so it still does breathe, but I get a little less air in there, and that helps. And this fits over my glasses pretty well too, so I look kind of odd when I have everything on, and especially if I have a lot of times I have my headphones on because I'm listening to my tablet, because I have a tablet over here that I have Netflix and all that on, because usually my son is over in the corner over there playing video games. So yeah, I'll have everything on and listening, and yeah, so it gets quite interesting if somebody walks in on me unexpected. So I think that is all I have for you today. Make sure you're ventilating. Make sure you're trying different things. Don't be afraid to experiment. Wear your PPE. And have a great day. I'll talk to you later. Find something crafty to do. Bye-bye.